The ornate chamber of the House Oversight Committee crackled with tension as Chairman Jim Jordan gavelled the session to order. The packed hearing room buzzed with anticipation. Journalists filled the press section, staffers lined the walls, and the public gallery overflowed with spectators eager to witness what promised to be an explosive session on government surveillance practices. C-SPAN cameras panned across the room, capturing the scene for millions of viewers watching from home. Jordan, the fiery 59-year-old Ohio Republican, known for his confrontational questioning style and unwavering conservative positions, had specifically structured this hearing to highlight what he characterized as systematic government overreach under the current administration. Always in his trademark shirt sleeves, no jacket, tie slightly askew, Jordan projected the image of a fighter ready for battle, a persona that had made him a conservative media favorite and a dreaded opponent for witnesses who came unprepared. Seated at the committee dais, second row on the Democratic side, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett reviewed her notes with focused intensity. The 43-year-old former civil rights attorney from Texas was only in her second term, but had quickly established herself as one of the Democrats' most effective questioners, combining her legal background with a gift for translating complex issues into accessible language. Today, dressed in a structured royal blue suit, her expression revealed nothing of her strategy for the contentious hearing ahead. The witness table featured a panel of Justice Department officials called to testify about surveillance authorization procedures, but everyone in the room knew the real show would be the committee members' questioning, particularly the inevitable confrontation between Jordan and Crockett, who had clashed repeatedly in previous hearings. Their philosophical approaches couldn't have been more different. Jordan's theatrical, accusatory style versus Crockett's methodical, evidence-based approach. After the witnesses delivered their opening statements, Jordan began the questioning round, saving his own time for later when he could respond to Democratic points. As several Republican members followed Jordan's lead with questions designed to support the chairman's narrative about government overreach, Crockett could be seen occasionally making additional notes, her expression remaining neutral. When Jordan finally recognized himself for questioning, he leaned forward into his microphone, his intensity immediately commanding the room's attention. After a few preliminary questions to the witnesses establishing his narrative about surveillance procedures, he unexpectedly pivoted, turning his focus directly to Crockett. "You know, before I continue with the witnesses, I'd like to address something," Jordan said, his voice taking on the mocking tone familiar from viral clips of his previous hearings. "My colleague from Texas has repeatedly claimed in media appearances that Republicans are manufacturing concerns about surveillance overreach." The camera caught Crockett looking up from her notes, her expression revealing mild surprise at being directly addressed during Jordan's questioning time, an unusual break from committee protocol. "Congresswoman Crockett has lectured us all about how these concerns are baseless conspiracy theories," Jordan continued, making air quotes with his fingers. "She's gone on CNN, MSNBC, telling the American people that there's absolutely no evidence of surveillance abuses under this administration." His voice grew increasingly sarcastic. "Of course, the gentle lady from Texas is a former defense attorney, so she's used to defending the indefensible. But I think the American people deserve better than having legitimate concerns about their constitutional rights dismissed as conspiracy theories by Democrats, more interested in protecting the administration than protecting citizens." The personal attack, unusual even by the standards of the increasingly partisan committee, drew murmurs from the audience and visible reactions from several committee members. The chairman had used his privileged position not to question witnesses, but to publicly mock a committee member who would have to wait her turn to respond. Before diving deeper into this explosive confrontation that has everyone talking, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We bring you the most revealing political showdowns with context and analysis you won't find elsewhere. Turn on notifications so you never miss our latest uploads. Jim Jordan wasn't just any committee chairman engaging in routine partisan sparring. As one of the founding members of the House Freedom Caucus and a close ally of former President Trump, Jordan had established himself as one of Congress's most combative figures. His rise to the powerful Oversight Committee chairmanship represented a significant victory for the conservative wing of the Republican Party, providing him with a prominent platform to pursue investigations aligned with his political priorities. Jordan's questioning style had become his trademark, rapid fire, often accusatory, and designed to leave little room for nuanced responses. His approach typically involved establishing a narrative through selective citation of facts, followed by questions framed to force witnesses into either confirming his predetermined conclusion or appearing evasive. This technique had produced numerous viral moments that circulated widely in conservative media, reinforcing his reputation as a fighter unafraid to challenge what he viewed as establishment corruption. In recent months, Jordan had made government surveillance practices a central focus of his committee work, alleging that intelligence and law enforcement agencies had systematically abused their authorities to target political opponents. These claims resonated deeply with his conservative base, though critics noted that his committee had yet to produce substantive evidence supporting the most serious allegations. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett approached oversight from a fundamentally different perspective. Before entering politics, she had built her reputation as a civil rights attorney specializing in cases involving government misconduct, giving her first-hand experience with the tension between legitimate security concerns and constitutional protections. This background informed her evidence-focused approach to committee work, where she typically emphasized specific facts and documentation rather than broad political narratives. Since joining the Oversight Committee, Crockett had established herself as one of the Democrats' most effective questioners, not through matching Republicans' confrontational style, but through methodical exposure of factual inconsistencies and logical flaws in witness testimony. Her approach rarely produced the kind of explosive viral moments that Jordan was known for, instead building methodically towards substantive revelations that often received less public attention despite their greater policy significance. The clash between Jordan and Crockett thus represented more than routine partisan disagreement. It was a collision between fundamentally different approaches to congressional oversight: theatrical confrontation versus substantive investigation, political narrative versus factual analysis, accusation versus evidence. As Jordan concluded his unexpected attack on Crockett, the committee room fell silent, all eyes turning to the Texas Congresswoman to gauge her reaction. Would she demand a point of order to challenge the chairman's breach of protocol? Would she respond with an equally personal counterattack? Or would she maintain her typically composed approach despite the provocation? Crockett remained remarkably still, her expression revealing nothing as she made a brief note on the pad before her. The only indication that she had registered the attack at all was a slight straightening of her posture as she continued reviewing her materials. Jordan, perhaps disappointed by the lack of visible reaction, returned to questioning the witnesses, pressing them on what he characterized as insufficient safeguards against political targeting in surveillance applications. His questions returned to familiar territory, building his narrative about systematic abuses while providing limited opportunity for witnesses to offer context or clarification. Nearly 40 minutes later, after several other committee members had completed their questioning rounds, the chairman finally announced, "The gentlewoman from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes." Crockett thanked the chairman and began by asking the witnesses several technical questions about surveillance authorization procedures, focusing particularly on the multiple levels of review required before surveillance could be approved. Nothing in her demeanor suggested she had been rattled by Jordan's earlier mockery, nor did she immediately address his accusations. an approach that visibly puzzled some observers expecting an immediate counterattack. After establishing several factual points about surveillance safeguards through her witness questions, Crockett shifted direction slightly. "I'd like to enter into the record a report from the Justice Department Inspector General dated April 17th of this year, reviewing surveillance applications from the past 18 months, she said, holding up a document. The report specifically examined whether political considerations influenced any surveillance authorizations during this period. The committee clerk accepted the report as Crockett continued. "For my colleagues who may not have reviewed this report yet, it analyzed all 1,203 FISA applications submitted during the relevant period and found no instances, zero, where political affiliations were mentioned as justification for surveillance." Her tone remained measured and professional, focused on the specific evidence rather than Jordan's personal attack. The report further notes that enhanced review procedures implemented in 2020, which require documentation of political activities of surveillance targets, were followed in 99.7% of applications, with the few exceptions involving administrative oversights rather than deliberate omissions. Crockett turned a page in her notes. "I'd also like to enter into the record transcripts from the closed-door testimony this committee received last month from 3 FBI whistleblowers, particularly pages 42 through 57, where they discussed the specific allegations of political targeting. This reference caught the attention of several Republican members, including Jordan, who looked up sharply. The whistleblower testimony had been conducted in closed session, and while committee members had access to the transcripts, they had not been publicly released pending review for classified information. For colleagues who may not recall this portion of the testimony, Crockett continued, her voice still conversational rather than confrontational, all 3 whistleblowers, when questioned directly, stated they had no first-hand knowledge of political considerations influencing surveillance decisions. One specifically said, and I quote, "I have concerns about the potential for abuse, but I cannot cite specific cases where I witnessed political motivation behind surveillance requests." The precise citation of testimony that undermined Jordan's central narrative from the very whistleblowers his investigation had relied upon created a palpable shift in the room. Several Republican members could be seen quickly reviewing their own copies of the testimony, while Jordan himself began writing rapidly on his notepad. But Crockett wasn't finished. "Now, I'd like to address something that came up earlier in today's hearing. Chairman, Jordan suggested that I have dismissed concerns about surveillance as, quote, baseless conspiracy theories. I think it's important to clarify my actual position for the record." For the first time, she looked directly at Jordan, though her tone remained professional rather than antagonistic. "What I have actually said consistently is that legitimate oversight of surveillance authorities is essential, and that abuses have occurred in the past that justify ongoing scrutiny." The public statements Chairman Jordan referenced were specifically addressing claims that surveillance decisions under the current administration have been politically motivated, claims for which, as the Inspector General report and our own whistleblower testimony confirm, there is indeed no substantiating evidence. The distinction was subtle but significant, clarifying that she had not dismissed concerns about surveillance in general, only specific unsubstantiated claims about political targeting. Without directly accusing Jordan of mischaracterizing her position, she had effectively corrected the record. Then, in a move that clearly caught Jordan and other Republican members by surprise, Crockett held up a different document. "I'd like to enter into the record a report that my office has compiled analyzing the 93 specific allegations of politically motivated surveillance that have been raised in this committee's hearings over the past 6 months. This was the first public mention of such a comprehensive analysis, and its unexpected appearance immediately commanded attention throughout the hearing room. My staff has traced each allegation to its original source and cross-referenced it with available evidence," Crockett explained. "The full methodology is detailed in the report, but I want to highlight a few key findings." She turned to a specific page. Of the 93 allegations, 64 originated from a single anonymous online forum. Of those 64, 41 contained factual claims that could be directly refuted by public records, such as asserting surveillance of individuals who were not in the locations claimed on the dates specified. Crockett flipped to another section. Perhaps most significantly, 27 allegations repeated identical language verbatim, despite supposedly coming from different sources, strongly suggesting coordination or a common origin rather than independent reports. The methodical dismantling of the allegations that had formed the foundation for much of Jordan's investigation was delivered without accusation or partisan framing, simply presenting factual analysis that directly contradicted the narrative the chairman had been building for months. The report also identifies 12 allegations that contain details specific enough to warrant further investigation, Crockett added, acknowledging potential legitimacy in some claims. I've outlined a proposed investigative approach for these cases on pages 87 to 92, including specific document requests and witness interviews that could help determine their validity. This balanced approach, acknowledging concerns that merited further scrutiny while exposing the dubious nature of others, made it difficult to dismiss her analysis as merely partisan opposition. She had effectively repositioned herself not as opposing legitimate oversight, but as advocating for factually grounded investigation rather than politically motivated narrative building. Jordan, recognizing the threat this unexpected evidence posed to his carefully constructed narrative, interrupted despite committee rules requiring him to wait for her time to expire. The gentlewoman should know that her so-called analysis has not been verified by committee staff or reviewed by the majority. We can't simply accept partisan research as fact. It was a procedural objection intended to undermine the credibility of Crockett's report, but she responded with yet another surprise. I appreciate the chairman's concern for verification, which is why my report relies primarily on two sources, she replied, maintaining her composed tone despite the interruption. First, publicly available records that anyone can verify independently, and second, the committee's own investigative materials, all of which are cited by specific Bates numbers so colleagues can easily reference the original documents. She held up the report again, revealing a thick document filled with footnotes and citations. Additionally, recognizing the importance of bipartisan validation, I sent an advance copy to 3 former Republican-appointed Justice Department officials, all of whom served in senior roles overseeing surveillance authorities. Their assessments of the methodology are included in Appendix B. This revelation, that she had sought validation from Republican-appointed officials, further complicated attempts to dismiss her analysis as partisan. Jordan's expression tightened visibly as he realized the thorough preparation behind what had initially appeared to be a standard committee exchange. Mr. Chairman, Crockett continued, I share your commitment to rigorous oversight of surveillance authorities. Where we differ is not in whether oversight is needed, but in whether conclusions should precede evidence or follow from it. The report I've submitted today doesn't make sweeping claims about the absence of problems. It simply analyzes specific allegations against available evidence, finding some warranting further investigation and others contradicted by factual records. The reframing was masterful, positioning herself as advocating for evidence-based oversight rather than opposing scrutiny altogether, while simultaneously highlighting the chairman's pattern of making accusations before establishing their factual basis. As her allocated 5 minutes expired, Crockett concluded, I look forward to working with colleagues on both sides of the aisle to pursue substantive investigation where warranted, based on specific evidence rather than generalized suspicion. That's the oversight the American people deserve. The impact of this unexpected evidentiary presentation was immediate and visible throughout the hearing room. Democratic members, many of whom had been playing defense against Jordan's aggressive allegations for months, sat up straighter, energized by the comprehensive factual rebuttal. Several Republican members could be seen paging through the report Crockett had submitted, their expressions suggesting they were encountering this systematic analysis for the first time. Most notably, Jordan himself appeared momentarily at a loss for how to respond. His usual rapid-fire, confident style relied on controlling the narrative through assertion and accusation, with limited opportunity for factual rebuttal. Crockett's methodical presentation of specific evidence, particularly the revelation that the committee's own whistleblower testimony contradicted his central claims, had fundamentally altered the dynamic he had carefully established. As the hearing continued, the shift in tone was palpable. Republican members largely abandoned the broad allegations of systematic political targeting that had dominated earlier questioning, instead focusing on specific procedural concerns that didn't depend on proving political motivation. The witnesses, previously defensive under aggressive accusatory questioning, engaged more substantively with these narrower, more factually grounded inquiries. By the time Jordan gavelled the session to a close 3 hours later, the hearing had evolved from the partisan spectacle he had clearly intended into something closer to actual oversight, examining specific surveillance practices and procedures based on established facts rather than unsubstantiated allegations. In his closing statement, Jordan made no reference to Crockett or her report, instead emphasizing the committee's broad authority to investigate all aspects of federal law enforcement operations, a significant retreat from his earlier specific accusations of political targeting. The chairman, who had begun the hearing mockingly attacking a colleague's credibility, had ended it, avoiding any mention of the evidence she had presented. As the hearing concluded and attendees filed out of the room, the impact was already spreading beyond the committee chambers. Video clips of Crockett's methodical dismantling of Jordan's allegations quickly accumulated millions of views across social media platforms. Political analysts from across the spectrum noted the effectiveness of her approach. What made Congresswoman Crockett's response so devastating wasn't that she matched Jordan's confrontational style, observed a veteran congressional reporter. It was that she systematically exposed the factual weaknesses in his narrative using the committee's own evidence, including testimony from the very whistleblowers he had repeatedly cited as supporting his allegations. Conservative commentators, while generally avoiding direct criticism of Jordan, acknowledged the substantive impact of Crockett's presentation. The surveillance oversight hearings have clearly entered a new phase, noted a contributor on Fox News. The focus has shifted from broad allegations of systematic abuse to examining specific procedural safeguards and their effectiveness, a more limited but potentially more productive approach to legitimate oversight concerns. For Jordan, the hearing represented a rare tactical miscalculation. His decision to personally attack Crockett had created an opportunity for her to respond with evidence that might otherwise have received less attention. By the following day, his office had released a statement promising a thorough review of Crockett's report, a defensive posture markedly different from his usual aggressive certainty. Chairman Jordan made a classic error in oversight investigations, explained a former Republican committee counsel. He publicly committed to a specific narrative before thoroughly vetting the supporting evidence, creating vulnerability if that evidence didn't ultimately sustain his conclusions. Congressman Crockett exploited that vulnerability with remarkable effectiveness. For Crockett, the exchange elevated her national profile significantly. Already respected within Congress for her legal acumen, the viral nature of her methodical dismantling of Jordan's allegations introduced her to a much broader audience. Legal and policy organizations began seeking her participation in panels and discussions, recognizing her ability to translate complex oversight issues into accessible explanations without sacrificing analytical rigor. What Congresswoman Crockett demonstrated wasn't just good committee questioning, noted a former Justice Department official. It was a masterclass in how to conduct substantive oversight, focusing on specific facts and evidence rather than broad narratives, acknowledging legitimate concerns while exposing unsubstantiated claims, and repositioning the discussion around shared values rather than partisan divisions. Perhaps most significantly, the exchange altered the trajectory of the committee's surveillance investigation. In subsequent hearings, Republican members largely abandoned the broad claims of political targeting that had dominated earlier sessions, instead focusing on specific procedural concerns and safeguards, areas where bipartisan agreement on reforms was potentially achievable. The most important impact wasn't that Jordan was momentarily embarrassed, observed a committee staffer. It was that the oversight process itself became more substantive as a result. When allegations are required to withstand factual scrutiny before driving investigations, the entire process improves, producing findings and recommendations that can actually lead to meaningful reforms rather than just political talking points. For political observers, the confrontation between Jordan and Crockett represented something larger than a single committee exchange. It demonstrated how prepared, evidence-based responses could overcome even the most aggressive attempts at partisan framing and personal attack. Jordan's approach, combining mockery, personal attack, and broad, unsubstantiated allegations, had been effectively neutralized by Crockett's calm presentation of specific evidence directly contradicting his central claims. In doing so, she had provided a template for effective oversight that contrasted sharply with the theatrical confrontations that often characterized committee hearings. Rather than matching Jordan's combative style with counter-accusations, Crockett had elevated the discussion to a more substantive level, one where specific evidence took precedence over broad narratives and factual analysis mattered more than rhetorical flourish. The Jordan-Crockett exchange reminds us that in congressional oversight, as in courtrooms, evidence ultimately matters more than accusation, concluded a political analyst. When confronted with specific, well-documented facts that contradict preferred narratives, even the most skilled practitioners of confrontational politics find themselves at a disadvantage. For viewers across the political spectrum, the exchange offered a rare and valuable glimpse of how congressional oversight can function at its best, not as a platform for partisan performance, but as a mechanism for establishing facts, examining evidence, and holding government institutions accountable based on substantive analysis rather than ideological presumption. And in a political environment often characterized more by heat than light, Crockett's methodical dismantling of Jordan's mockery had provided something increasingly rare but immensely valuable: a victory for evidence over allegation, for substance over spectacle, for the patient work of fact-finding over the immediate gratification of accusation without proof. If you found this breakdown of how Congresswoman Crockett turned Chairman Jordan's mockery against him through surprise evidence valuable, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel. We bring you the most revealing political confrontations with context and analysis you won't find elsewhere. Hit that notification bell to stay updated on our latest videos showing how preparation and evidence can overcome even the most aggressive political attacks.